Greetings, leaders. Thank you so much for joining us for the episode of Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Consulting, where I work with emerging leaders, high potential employees, and students to develop and embrace a growth mindset for leadership. This episode, we're talking about the 12 ships that every leader sails. And sales, of course, as you know, I use acronyms for many of the words that leaders use on a daily basis. This one is SAIL, right? And so we're going to talk about it. And we're going to be coming from my book today, 10 Principles of Success for the First-Time Manager. I hope you enjoy. Greetings, leaders. Thank you so much for joining us for the episode of Leadership Is Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muhammad, founder of JM Leadership Consulting. We have been doing a podcast on leadership and leadership development for emerging leaders, students, and high potentials for some time now. However, we're going to continue in that vein, and I love imparting information onto emerging leaders and C-suite leaders, high potential employees, and those that are looking for the leadership challenge and accepting the leadership challenge. I love imparting information to you. My podcasts are more of a training podcast than just regular listening to information type podcast, right? I love to give some trainings on there, and just to give you a snapshot of what I can do actually if you were to invite me to keynote or do a training development within your company, at your agency or organization. We definitely can give the results of shifting the mindset of those emerging leaders and high potential employees, and even your challenging employees with some leadership mindset soft skills, right? It can actually help them to shift their mindset. So again, thank you so much for participating with this podcast, listening to this podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the 12 ships that every leader sails. The ultimate goal of leadership, right, is to establish ownership, right? Ownership simply means, that now you own the day. The day belongs to you, right? And so when you, as a leader, are successful at that, you have produced other leaders who have produced or are producing other leaders, right? That's how you own the day as a leader. So these 12 ships here is going to establish you to ownership. And we're going to talk about this here in just a few minutes, right? So, again, we're in a time of transition. Time of transition simply meaning that, it's been established by a crisis. A crisis is racial injustice and, of course, the COVID-19, which has produced another crisis within itself, an economic pandemic, right? So with all of the millions of people who have filed for unemployment, due to this COVID-19, and it has produced a spike of 52% more remote workers, what we're looking at here is there was a question that was asked on LinkedIn, I think it was by Simon Sinek, is, are remote workers permanent now, right? And so, again, this is our new norm. So we got to get in the mindset of accepting the new norm that was caused by this COVID-19, which caused, a lot of physical deaths, but it also caused an economic shift, right? Well, people have been filing so much for the unemployment benefits. Many companies have actually furloughed their employees. And, of course, you have a lot of these employees who have actually quit. But now, as some of the stages of reopening the economy and reopening the country is taking place, right? You're going to have employees that are coming back to their prospective companies, agencies, and organizations, and they're going to have a different mindset, right? And so now you got to have leaders that are in place who are prepared to address and accommodate these leaders. We talked about in our last episode of Leadership Is the three things that every leader does during a time of crisis. Please go back and listen to that. It was episode 13, I believe it was. So please go back and listen to that episode as we break down three things that every leader does during a time of crisis. And those three things are very relevant. And of course, they are critical in this time, in this day and time. Okay, so but today we want to talk about the 12 ships that every leader sails. You know, a ship has a sail. Most ships has sails, right? And so when they're out there allowing the wind, you know, to blow into those ships to give them momentum and movement, you know, they are guided in a certain direction, right? And so whenever you are in a leadership, whenever you are a leader in a leadership, right, your ultimate goal as you're sailing is to establish ownership. You want to own the day. You want to own whatever it is that you're actually responsible for. You want to own that. So today I want to come from my book, Leadership Is 10 Principles of Success for the First-Time Manager, which of course you can get if you were to go to my website, www.jmleadershipconsult.com, and you can, you know, order it from there, or you can just simply cash at me, right? Money sign Jam Lead. That's money sign JAMLEAD, right? To get your copy of my book, Leadership Is 10 Principles of Success for the First-Time Manager. So for in this book here, right, the 12 ships that every leader sails, I'm going to go over what these ships are, but I'm going to also talk about the sails, right? So each ship has a sail. And in my book, I would divide the letters because, again, I don't want to change your vocabulary, but to expand your dictionary. This is why I use so many acronyms for words that we say every day. So if you're talking about a ship is sailing away, as leaderships sailing, right? You want to know, what does the sail mean? Okay, SAIL, not SALE. Of course, that's part of leadership as well, and we're going to talk about that because that's one of the ships that we're going to discuss today. Okay, so each ship has a sail, and I would divide the letters in sail to enhance your understanding of its relevancy and how it fits in the whole scheme of all things leadership. Okay, so sail, SAIL, stands for service, alignment, intrinsic development, and leading. Okay, leading. See, one of the things that I did some research. There's a company by the name of DDI, which is Dimensions Development International, right? And they did a survey of over 25,000 leaders, so 2,500 companies, right, with 2,500 HR professionals. And out of those who responded to some of their survey questions, 60% of their respondents said that the number 2 concern that they have is attaining and retaining the right talent, right? Attaining and maintaining or keeping, right, the right talent. But then 64% of the respondents said the number one thing that they have is developing next generation leadership, right? Developing next generation leadership. So that's, one of the things that I have been talking about that's been kind of constant with my podcast, right, is how do you develop your next generation of leaders. See, because again, depending on the old antiquated model of leadership, based on a time that no longer exists, it's not going to be efficient in this day and time, especially with more millennials coming into the workforce, and millennials are not looking for a boss. They're looking for coaches, right? They're looking for those who can lead them, but lead them with coaching. And then number two, they're also looking for opportunities, how they can insert their own intellectual property into the full scheme of things as it relates to the company development. Okay. So when we talk about intrinsic, development, we're talking about how the intrinsic development, is something that is, look, again, you got to look at, first of all, what is the word intrinsic, right? What does the word intrinsic mean? It means belonging, naturally, essential, right? So if it's something that is intrinsic, is belonging and natural, right? It's, of course, contained wholly within the organ on which it acts. So these are natural people who are naturally the ones who should be into your development programs for your next generation leaders. So this is why, sailing, SAIL, right? And so this is what that actually means. So the first one is service. The second one is alignment. And then the third one is intrinsic development. Then, of course, there is leading. And so those are the sails that each ship has. So with these 12 ships that every leader sails, I've broken them down into those four components: service, alignment, intrinsic development, and leading. So in service, you have relationship, statesmanship, discipleship. In alignment, you have partnerships, sponsorship, citizenship. And in intrinsic development, you have flagship, salesmanship, marksmanship. And of course, in leading, you have leadership, championship, and headship. So within these 12 ships that every leader sails, I've broken them down into 4 sections that describes the type of sail that each of these ships use to build their momentum and to guide them and to create their movement. So the 12 ships that every leader sails is leadership, relationship, partnership, sponsorship, flagship, headship, statesmanship, championship, marksmanship, salesmanship, discipleship, and citizenship. Today I'm only going to talk about 3 of these ships, right? And so we're going to talk about leadership, relationship, and salesmanship. Those are the 3 ships we're going to talk about today. So we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to come back to our segment. Thank you so much. Greetings, leaders. I'm here to talk to you about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and or computer. Now, how convenient is that? Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast, too, with no minimum listenership. So it's everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. So do me a favor. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I look forward to seeing the greatness within you. Okay, thank you so much, leaders, for joining us as we continue with the episode. So the 3 ships we're going to talk about today out of the 12 is a leadership, relationship, and salesmanship. Okay, so leadership. We've been discussing, I'm coming from my book, Leadership is 10 Principles of Success for the First-Time Manager. And we have been discussing, in this book, from the beginning about leadership. So you already have you should have a general knowledge of what leadership is. And so to make the shift from being a manager to being a leader, the first ship that will be sailed is leadership. Leadership occurs when an individual is able to inspire and influence the actions of other people towards greatness. Leadership involves being able to create a vision and follow through to create reality out of this vision. It involves making decisions and choices that other people might find challenging. Leadership involves possessing such skills and abilities like sound judgment, critical thinking, excellent managerial and communication skills, and other skills that equips a person for leading other people to produce results and to be the best versions of themselves. So this is what leadership is. Leadership inspires, right? People grasping new plateaus, new development, new levels. That's what leadership does. It inspires that. See, remember, when I say leadership is, right? IS stands for influence and service. Leadership influences. John C. Maxwell said that everything rises and falls with leadership. And he says leadership is influence, right? And so he says that, that leadership at the bottom line, at the end of the day, leadership results to influence. And so using your influence as a leader, you can inspire people, right? Using such skills as critical thinking, excellent managerial and communication skills to relay your vision out to the people. See, listen, many people who call themselves leaders are nothing but bosses, right? And bosses bark out orders, while leaders pull their sleeves up and then they grab whatever it is that they have their employees grabbing, right? And they start leading. They get in the midst of things and they start leading, okay? And so, you need to make sure that you're not a boss versus striving to be a leader. So learn the difference between a boss and a leader, right? And so that's leadership. Secondly, we're going to talk about relationship. Another shift that a manager looking to make the shift from being a manager to becoming a leader will have to say is a relationship. A dictionary definition for relationship is the way in which two or more people or things are connected, or the state of being connected. That's a relationship. It's how we relate to one another, right? So you got to think about this ship. So if Peter Drucker says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So imagine a ship that has your culture on it and it's sailing on to its next idea and its next vision. Will that ship, in fact, crash, or will that ship burn down before it actually makes it to its destination? Well, that depends on the culture that you have in that ship, right? And so this one is called relationship. How people relate to one another, how people relate even to the ideas, to the KPIs, to the mission, the core values of your company, right? This is the culture that you're actually carrying on this ship to your next idea, to your next product, right? To your next connection, to your next relationship that you're building with another company, with your mergers, right? What culture are you actually transporting in this ship? That is your relationship within your company. And then that relationship, right? You're going to have those people who you're going to take them to your next island, to your next destination. Is that culture going to be a good fit for what it is that you're actually attempting to do? Discover that, right? So to be a leader, you have to master relationships, how to make them and how to keep the ones you already have. Of course, the only relationships you should even bother making or keeping are beneficial ones. They're called win-win. And we talked about this in one of our podcasts of how to build impactful relationships, which is one of the 3 keys for leaders to build influence, right? It's building impactful relationships. An impactful relationship, there's, the thing to make an impact right? There's an aim of impact, and we're not going to go, into that right now, but impact, right? And whenever you're making an impact, it affects others, it influences and motivates change. And so with that impact, right, the motivate change, how you can tell you have made a positive impact is that there is a win-win. It's mutually beneficial. And so, again, when you're transporting your culture or your relationships on this, ship to your next destination, how is that going to be? Is that going to be beneficial for you or mutually beneficial? Okay? So, the first relationship you should master is the one with yourself. You must first establish a great connection with yourself such that you become self-aware enough to improve your emotional intelligence. Now, I'm in the process of completing writing my fourth book, which is entitled 7 Steps to Break the Self-Defeated Mindset. In one of the chapters, we talk about the sea of emotions, and we're going to how that ties into emotional intelligence, right? And so emotional intelligence is something that we also talked about in our podcast of how to build impactful relationships, right? And so this emotional intelligence helps you to be able to find out the triggers within yourself and the triggers within whoever it is that you're having a conversation or building a relationship with, right? What triggers the happiness? What triggers the anger? What triggers the sadness? What triggers the standoffishness? What triggers the shutdowns, right? What triggers the eagerness to want to continue in this conversation? With emotional intelligence, you got to learn how to use that within yourself and learning it within the person or persons that you're actually communicating with, okay? So again, the first relationship you should master is the one with yourself. You must first establish a great connection with yourself such that you become self-aware enough to improve your emotional intelligence. After establishing a relationship with yourself, you must seek to establish meaningful relationships with other people. A lot of emphasis is placed on meaningful here, right? It's easy enough to make friends and exchange contacts, but are you doing it with people that will facilitate your growth and help you to be a better version of yourself, right? And so that's where strategic partnerships come in play. That's where building impactful relationships come in, because impactful relationships that are mutually beneficial are, of course, a win-win relationship. Okay? So now, the third ship that we want to talk about here is salesmanship. Salesmanship. Now, every leader that's in any kind of business, of course, you do want to make a profit, right? You do want to make sure that whatever product that you have with your marketing strategies, that your margins are good, so that your bottom line is where you're actually making a profit. Okay, so let me ask you a question: have you ever had the good fortune of being approached by a salesperson? So I mean, I've met some of them that are so good at what they can sell and convince you to buy something you don't even need, while telling yourself that you might need this in the immediate future, right? But they're called sleek. They're sleek salesmen, right? Salesmanship is the method and skills you use to sell or promote the products you're selling. When it comes down to it, a good manager and leader should be able to walk into a room and convince investors, potential customers, like those sleek salespeople will, to buy what they're selling. But I want you to keep something in mind with that. Gary Vaynerchuk says, don't fall in love with your product, fall in love with your ideal customer. Right? Because with your ideal customer, they will let you know exactly what product you should be developing. An ideal customer is one who is loyal, right? And then, of course, that is free marketing, because they're going to spread the word by word of mouth and telling other people, hey, listen, y'all should support this product. Y'all should support this company. You should support this agency's service, right? And so that's an ideal customer, someone that's been with you for a long time, spends, a lot of money with you, and then, of course, they promote your business. That is an ideal customer. And so then the ideal customer would go out and use your product, and then they would be the ones that are getting the feedback from the people asking, hey, where did you get, I don't like this. And then they'll kind of come back to the company as they're making other purchases to let you know, the feedback of the people. And then you can, of course, develop, tweak, and change and redevelop whatever product that you have, right? So fall in love with your ideal customer and make sure that you're pleasing your ideal customer. A long-lasting, loyal, ideal customer is more important and more valuable than 10 new customers, okay? So just keep that in mind. The key is to first believe in when you have a product. The key is to first believe in what you are holding, and then have enough confidence that the other person just wants to believe that you know what you're doing from the sheer size of it, from the sheer size of whatever the product is, right? Or whatever the idea is. When you're selling that idea, that product, the other person believes in it. Okay, they may not have as much passion as you have, and it depends on what their goal and objective is as it relates to connecting with that product. But again, you gotta be one as a salesmanship. You gotta sell ideas to your department heads, to your organization, or to your shareholders. You gotta sell ideas to them as far as the direction that you would like to take, right? So that's leadership. That's relationship, and that's salesmanship. The three key ships that every leader sells, right? So there are 12 ships that every leader sells. And of course, you got to keep in mind now the sale here is SAIL, service, alignment, intrinsic development, and leading. And the three key ships that every leader sells are leadership, relationship, and salesmanship. All right, so listen, you guys make sure that you take care of yourself. I hope that you learned something from this little podcast, and so I look forward to serving you more and more in the future. Take care. Hey, thank you so much for enjoying the podcast for today, the 12 ships every leader sells. And of course, we use the word sales as an acronym, SAIL, which is service, alignment, intrinsic development, and leading. And of course, we talked about, the 12 ships every leader sells, and we just talked about 3 of them, which was leadership, relationship, and salesmanship. So listen, if you would like to follow us, you can follow us on Facebook at JM Leadership Consulting. You can follow us on Instagram at JM Leadership Consulting. You can connect with me on LinkedIn at Jason A. Muhammad. And listen, I look forward to serving you and your company. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.